Most extinct animals stay extinct. A few come back inside a human lifetime. Declared gone, found again a decade later, filed under embarrassment. 2 animals in the forests of New Guinea came back after 7,000 years. That's not the strangest part. The strangest part is that a great many people already knew they were alive. They simply weren't the people writing the list. On the 5th of March, 2026, the Bishop Museum in Honolulu announced the results of 2 papers in the records of the Australian Museum. 2 marsupials, the pygmy long-fingered possum and the ring-tailed glider, had been confirmed alive on the Bird's Head Peninsula of Indonesian Papua. Until that morning, both animals existed in science's teeth. Fragments of jaw pulled out of a limestone cave floor, no specimen, no photograph, no sighting. In the entire scientific record of 2 species, not one confirmed living animal. 7,000 years, roughly 300 human generations. If you had stood up in 1999 and argued both were still out there, you would have been describing a hope, not a finding. The confirmation, when it finally came, arrived from a man named Carlos Bocos, standing in the dark under a rainforest canopy with a torch and a camera. He was not a scientist. He was not looking for an extinct animal. He posted his photographs to a public website and asked what he had seen. And it arrived from a group of elders who had never once considered the animals missing, and the man who named both species died before he learned that either one was alive. The animals that were only teeth. The Bird's Head Peninsula, the Vogelkop, is the hooked western end of New Guinea, the world's largest tropical island. Geologically, it isn't really New Guinea at all. It's an ancient fragment of the Australian continent that was carried north and welded onto the island's edge, bringing its animals with it. What grew there is layered. Kauri trees at the top, enormous and slow, hollowing out as they age. Below them, a canopy of leaves and sap that a 200-gram animal can live in its entire life without touching the ground. Below that, buttress roots, leaf litter, limestone. And under the limestone, caves. Caves are where the record comes from. In the 1990s, archaeologists excavating a cave near Ayamaru pulled out fossil teeth from 2 marsupials that were new to science, animals nobody had ever described. They were described, they were named, they were cataloged, and then they were filed as gone. Here's how a species becomes extinct on paper. First, something dies somewhere that happens to preserve bone. Second, someone digs it up. Third, someone with the expertise to recognize it gives it a name. Fourth, and this is the step nobody performs deliberately, the absence of any further evidence hardens over years into a conclusion. Nobody signed anything. There was no announcement. 2 animals simply moved from unknown to known and gone without ever having been seen. The dating is approximate. Some papers put the youngest fossils at around 6,000 years. The museum's own announcement says more than 7,000 years. The margin is real, and it is not the point. The direction was never in dispute. In the scientific record, both animals had been dead since before the pyramids. Biologists have a name for the exception. A Lazarus taxon, a species that drops out of the fossil record, is presumed extinct and then turns up living. The coelacanth is the famous one, a fish thought gone since the dinosaurs, hauled onto a South African dock in 1938. Lazarus taxa are rare enough that most working zoologists never encounter one. The fossil record looks like a record of what lived. It is not. It is a record of what happened to die somewhere that kept it. The man who named the dead. The scientist who named both species was Ken Aplin. Aplin was, by the account of everyone who worked with him, one of the most knowledgeable people alive on the animals of New Guinea, a man who spent the bulk of his working life on the island. When the cave material came back from the Vogelkop, he was the person capable of recognizing that what he was holding had never been described. Consider what that work actually involved. He was naming animals from teeth, a few millimeters of enamel and the shape of a jaw. From that, you establish that a lineage existed, that it was distinct from everything else in the family, and that it ended. You write it up, you give it a binomial, and you have never seen the animal, will never see the animal, and have no reasonable expectation that anyone else will either. Proving the 2 species were gone required nothing at all. It happened by default. Proving they were alive would require everything. Start with the animals themselves. The possum weighs about 200 grams, palm-sized. The glider, about 300, roughly a squirrel. Both are nocturnal. Both live in the canopy, one of them inside hollows in the tallest trees available. Neither comes down. Now put them in the Vogelkop, rainforest, minimal road access, no systematic mammal survey, and a search area measured in thousands of square kilometers. To confirm a species is alive, you need one animal in one place at one time, documented. To confirm it is extinct, you need to have looked everywhere. Nobody has ever looked everywhere. So the evidence, when it began accumulating, did not come from an expedition. It came from museum drawers. In 1992, a specimen of the ring-tailed glider was collected and lodged at the Australian Museum in Sydney. It was misidentified on arrival and sat, correctly preserved and incorrectly labeled, for 31 years. Separately, Aplin himself came across 2 specimens in a jar, fur and all, overlooked in a teaching collection at the University of Papua New Guinea. He looked at them properly and realized they were the same species he had described from fossil teeth. That was the first real clue that these animals were still here. Museum collections are usually described as archives of the past. Bishop Museum holds more than 25 million objects, over 22 million of them biological. Almost none of it is on display. It is not a memorial. It is a set of unanswered questions, waiting for somebody to ask the right one. 1 week after the funeral. For most of the next 2 decades, nothing happened. That is the honest version. Not a hunt, not a race, a slow trickle of ambiguous material arriving out of order with nobody able to close the loop. In 2015, a set of photographs was taken of an animal on the Bird's Head Peninsula. Whoever saw it wasn't sure what they were looking at. Large eyes, large hands. It resembled a slow loris, a primate that does not live on the island, or possibly a cuscus. Something was clearly there. Nothing could be concluded. Ken Aplin died in 2019. Within a week of his death, a colleague working in New Guinea sent a photograph to Christopher Helgen, Aplin's close friend and now president of the Bishop Museum. Helgen recognized it immediately. It was a gliding ring-tailed possum, and it had to be one of the 2 extinct species Aplin had named from teeth years earlier. 20 years of nothing, then 1 week. It is worth being exact about what the photograph did and did not do. The photograph did not find the animal. The animal had been in those forests continuously the entire time, in numbers sufficient to sustain a breeding population. Nothing about its situation changed. What the photograph found was a scientist who happened to know what he was looking at and who happened to have spent 30 years being the dead man's friend. The teeth had a face. Helgen's account of that week is restrained to the point of understatement. Sometimes, he said, the world works in mysterious ways. Ken sadly passed away in 2019. Within a week of his passing, a colleague sent me a photo of an animal in the wild, and I immediately knew what it was. What the fossils couldn't tell them. Confirming a species is alive is only the first half. The second half is finding out what you actually have. And here, the living animals began telling scientists things the fossils could not. Start with the possum. Dactylonax kambuayai is the smallest living striped possum, black and white banded, roughly the pattern of a skunk. On its front paw is a 4th finger of extraordinary length. Proportionally, relative to its other fingers, it is longer than in any other mammal on Earth. It uses it as a tool. The possum taps that finger against the bark of a tree and listens with its ear, reading the sound for hollows where grubs are moving underneath. Then it extracts them. It is percussion foraging. The animal is effectively sounding out the inside of a tree. It has 1 baby at a time. Then the glider. Tous ayamaruensis lives in hollows in large trees. It is a powerful leaper, and it glides between trees using a patagium, a flap of skin running down each side of the body that opens into a membrane. It has a long prehensile tail with a strong grip. Nocturnal, monogamous, leaves and tree sap, 1 young at a time. Its closest living relative is the greater glider of eastern Australia, bigger, with much larger ears and no functional prehensile tail. The two lineages have been separated by millions of years of independent evolution. Here is the part worth sitting with. The fossil remains were fragmentary jaw material. From jaw fragments, you cannot determine whether an animal glides. Scientists genuinely did not know. Helgen's comment on this is the sharpest line in the entire announcement. New Guinea communities knew this already, of course. Now, we know too. The animal was placed in a genus new to science. New mammal genera are described only a handful of times in a year worldwide. Archaeological material from Papua New Guinea, 1,000 kilometers east, supplied the first upper teeth ever documented for the species, a gap that had stood since it was named from jaws alone. And then there was the possum, which came in through a channel no Research Council funds. On iNaturalist, a public website where anyone can post a photograph of an animal and ask what it is, images of a small striped possum began appearing from New Guinea. Some of them were taken by a man named Carlos Bocos. Bocos is not a scientist, he is a mammal watcher. It is a real hobby and a small international one. People who travel to remote forests at night with torches to look at obscure mammals for no reason beyond wanting to see them. In 2023, the photographs showed the animal clearly for the first time. Palm-sized, banded black and white, and on its front paw, a single finger roughly twice the length of the others. Nobody taking those pictures was hunting an extinct species. They were posting to a public feed with an open question attached. What is this? Two of the world's leading authorities on the mammals of New Guinea were reading that feed. Carlos Bocos is a co-author on the paper, The People Who Never Lost Them. Which raises a question about the word in every headline that followed. Found. Bocos found the animal the way you find a street you have never walked down. It was already there. It had a name. People used it. The second stream of evidence was older, and it was never lost in the first place. Rika Karain is a Maybrat woman and a human rights lawyer. When Tim Flannery asked her whether the glider might still exist, she went to the elders of the Tambrau, neighbors to the Maybrat, sharing traditions. They recognized the animal immediately. They distinguished it from other tree-dwelling possums. They described how it lives in the high hollows. They call it Tous. The new genus name is their word. To some Vogelkop clans, it is sacred, regarded as a manifestation of ancestral spirits, and central to a traditional educational practice described as initiation. Its forest has been protected for generations. At the heart of that forest stand kauri trees that the clans hold to be the birthplace of all animals and all humans. Karain is a co-author, so is Marnix Mjam, so is Dr. Aksamina Yohanida of the University of Papua, not informants. Authors. Flannery's assessment. The older members of the communities we worked with are the true professors of New Guinea biology. So there were two photographs and two kinds of knowing, and they were not doing the same job. The scientists are not wrong that verification matters. A claim has to be checkable, comparable, repeatable, or it is not science. And the elders are not wrong that nothing whatsoever was discovered. Method supplies verification, knowledge supplies continuity. Only one of them had a gap. The one's still out there. In the forests of the Vogelkop stand the kauri. They are the tallest thing in that landscape and among the slowest. Trees that grow for centuries and hollow out as they age. And it is inside those hollows that Tous nests, raising one young at a time. To the clans who share that forest, the kauri are where all animals and all humans began. They are also, in the strictly technical sense, the reason there is anything to announce. A canopy animal that nests in old hollows cannot survive the loss of old trees. Every year those forests stood, the glider was still there, invisible to the record, alive in fact. Change one variable. Take the forest first. Take it before anyone thought to ask. Both animals would have gone extinct, in fact, as well as on paper, and no one outside the Vogelkop would ever have known they had been alive to begin with. The teeth in the cave would have remained the whole story, and the story would have been wrong forever, and nobody would ever have found out. Count what it actually rested on. A specimen collected in 1992 and mislabeled for 31 years. 2 animals in a jar in a teaching collection. Photographs from 2015 that nobody could interpret. A photograph that arrived in 2019 in the week after a funeral. A hobbyist with a torch posting to a website, a conversation with elders who had known all along. Not one of those was a search. The findings were published in March 2026 in 2 papers by scientists from the Bishop Museum, the Australian Museum, and the University of Papua, with indigenous co-authors from the bird's head. A new genus. 2 species moved from the fossil record to the living one. The work is nowhere near finished. The full range of the ring-tailed glider is still unknown. The confirmed modern records amount to a handful of points on a map. Nobody can yet say how many there are or how much forest they need. And Tim Flannery, asked whether these were the last of them, said there are almost certainly more. He named a candidate, the small forest wallaby. Ken Aplin named both of these animals. He never saw either one alive. He died in 2019 believing he had described 2 extinctions. But the possum is out there, tapping its finger against bark, listening for something moving underneath. The glider is in the hollows of the kauri, and the teeth in the cave near Ayamaru have faces now. Helgen's conclusion is that these rediscoveries show extinction can be averted, that it is a message of hope and of second chances. It is also, quietly, a message about accuracy. The 2 animals are not coming back. They were never away.